There's a new composition that's infesting ladder. We're calling it the Hungry Crab. Using Pit Fighters as your core, you roll for Urgot 3 and Set 3, and then you sacrifice Set using an anomaly called Hunger for Power. The anomaly says, combat start, consume the nearest ally and gain 60% of their HP and attack damage. So when you sacrifice a Set 3 that has Warmogs and Deathblades on it, you're going to have this insanely overpowered crab that's going to make everyone feel a little claustrophobic. In this episode of In Too Deep, we're going to hop on board with one of the best players in the world, YBY, and showcase just how insane this composition can be. Before we start, let's take a look at the composition on the TFT Academy tier list to find out exactly what we need here. To start things off, the reason why this composition is B tier is because it's inconsistent, you can't really hit it as often as you like, and you need very specific items. Those items that you need are Infinity Edge, Hand of Justice, and Quicksilver, which requires 3 gloves. And on top of that, the ideal setup for Set are having multiple Warmogs and potentially a Deathblade. That's 3 swords, 4 belts, 3 gloves, tier, and a cloak. That's just very, very specific stuff that you're not going to get very often. What ends up happening a lot instead is you have Urgot with Biss, maybe 1 or 2 items on Set, and then a bunch of utility items on Nunu, and maybe like backup DPS on Gangplank, Savika, or Vi. This best in slot is really important because Infinity Edge and Hand of Justice are the theoretical highest amount of damage based off of the corrosive charge crit. You're able to hit so many different units, and it is the highest ceiling of his DPS. And Quicksilver is just important because it stops him from getting stunned, and it also gives you extra crit chance because it uses a glove, so it maxes out your crit. The core build is always going to be 3 experiment with sets, and you get Set with Bruiser on Nunu, and then you just tie in as many Pit Fighters as you can. You're also going to always put Urgot and Zyra in the experiment hexes. Nunu's bonus sounds good in theory, but after many people have tried it, they told us that it just doesn't really do that much, and the number probably just needs to get buffed. Unsurprisingly, the most important augment priority is items because it's just going to be really hard to force specific items. So I recommend it off of things like Pandora's items. If you get things like Belt Overflow and get infinite belts, that ends up being really good, and same thing with Sword Overflow. But also really good econ augments are important as well because you do need to hit the Urgot 3 and Set 3 in a timely manner, otherwise you're going to fall far behind. And then potentially the most important part is save your gold to roll for Hunger for Power on Urgot. Otherwise, this composition doesn't work at all, and you're just going to go 8th. So most of the time, you're going to collect these units, slow roll on 6 for Urgot 3, Set 3, then push levels for the Pit Fighters, and win the game. We're hopping on board with YBY's POV, who is currently competing in the Box Bootcamp against a lot of the top NA and international players. YBY has almost won this competition a couple times, and this is one of the hardest tournaments to generally perform in because, one, it's very long to play like a couple weeks and climb as high as you can. You're competing against a bunch of the top players in NA, but you're also on 300 ping. So YBY might be a little bit lagging from this POV, but that's largely due to the fact that he's playing from Vietnam, and he's considered to be one of the best players, if not the best player from Vietnam, has made it to multiple Worlds finals. So excited to see him play this game. We're going to start off with Zyra pair, and we pick up Urgot, so we have an experiment opener. We didn't buy the Lux, which is a little bit surprising to me. I personally think Lux is quite good right now in the early game. She has a lot of single target power, and if you pair her with Zyra, you end up guaranteeing like a couple of kills per fight if you give her items. So I personally like Lux a lot, but it looks like he's open to holding things like the Morgana in case it leads into Black Rose, or maybe into some of the other things like this Scrap Trundle, and maybe lean into Scrap, which looks like he is going to hold those units. Go ahead and talk about some of these augments. This is in Vietnamese, so let's go ahead and break it down. The first augment is reroll transfer. This augment says for each reroll you don't use, you get 3 additional rerolls, but you don't count it for this round. So it's a reroll augment that you can use later on, and it's good for compositions that want to roll both on stage 3 and stage 4. So you're looking at 2 and 3 cost reroll mainly. You don't really want to play a 1 cost reroll with this because you really want to finish your rerolls by the time stage 3 is done, as opposed to like the beginning of stage 4. That being said, the downside is pretty significant. Not rerolling your augments is generally considered to be quite a poor thing because you just don't get to select really powerful synergy with your composition. So I generally stay away from this unless I'm hard committed to like rerolling a 2 and 3 cost that I'm very convinced is really good, like a Camille, for example. Pumping up 1 is okay. It's pretty solid for compositions that want attack speed. You're looking at Twitch, for example, or maybe a unit that scales off of how often they cast. So if you have, Heimerdinger, the more he casts, the more attack speed can benefit him. So I don't think we're going to be picking that because we're going to be playing an Urgot composition, but something to think about. And then Bulky Buddies is an augment that I think is just like generically okay. It's like a safe option to fall back to, very generic, just a little bit of extra HP. And it does tend to do better in things that have higher HP. So like, bruisers, for example, ends up being pretty good for that. You choose to reroll all 3 of these, and I think that's okay because a lot of times when you're choosing your augment, you're looking for direction, and silvers are a little bit difficult to give you direction because, they're not giving you the emblem, they're not giving you like the crazy prismatic power. So a lot of times you end up deferring your decision. There's a lot of silvers that say like, in 7 turns, get an item or get a bunch of gold. So you're able to like plan around that a little bit, so just kind of defer it. But if you can get something strong to give you early direction right now, that'd be really good, and I think none of those really did. This first augment is good for something, and good for something is okay if you plan on loose streaking because you're not going to slam your items, and so you end up just like using it to get a little bit of extra gold and then power load your items onto like 1 or 2 champions. It's okay. It's pretty decent as an econ augment if you are looking for that. Option 2 is Pandora's Bench, but it actually does give you a direction of rerolling because Pandora's Bench is good early. It's not very good at 3-2. I see a lot of people pick Pandora's Bench at 3-2, but they don't have the economy to back it up, and they don't have the HP either. So they're like trading HP and waiting for a long time for things to roll, so it's not high value. 2-1 is when it's a lot better, and you could roll 1 or 2 cost units and lean into that. The last augment is Rig Shop, which is your next shop, and every 4 shops will be for 3 costs. And this is for 3 cost reroll. If you want to roll for Kog'Maw, or maybe you're going for like Cassio and something else, then you can end up going for those 3 costs. But because we're not leaning towards that right now, I don't think we're going to be selecting that. So I think Pandora's Bench makes the most sense here. And he already hits a Urgot pair and a couple of 2 costs. So now he can actually immediately start leaning into it. And here's the important thing of how he decided to commit to the Urgot reroll. He has a slammable item right now in the Hand of Justice, and he has a buildable item for the future by using this belt into a Warmogs. And so because he's already has that direction, he can start leaning into it. So that way he's not playing super far behind. If he had like a rod and a bow and I guess another component that you can't really use, so maybe like a vest, like those are just like really awkward items that you can't use for the Urgot or the set because those components are not related. And so you'd have to sacrifice and wait for forgers or other things to fix your items, and you have nothing actually to slam right now. That being said, it's not like he's win streaking anyways. He slams those items to see if he can preserve his HP and see if he can get an extra kill or 2. Oh my gosh, it's a very, very high roll. He's completed the Urgot 2 and the Trundle, so now he definitely should be able to kill some units. He's trying to position onto the side of the fight that he thinks is going to kill the most units. Although I think now he's in a position to win streak. As soon as he finds a pit fighter, I think he can combine that pit fighter with Urgot. I personally like activating pit fighter a little bit more than artillerist, but we'll see what he ends up getting. One thing that's really nice about Urgot, by the way, is that he actually sunders the opponent for 20%. So ends up being really convenient to delay things like Last Whisper, so that you don't have to prioritize it nearly as quickly. You still do want things like Even Shadow and Last Whisper later on, but for now, it's like Urgot sunders for himself, which is pretty convenient. We're going to second Powder here. She's scrap, plus she has a little bit of utility. We mentioned that Urgot has the sundering. Well, Powder also adds a little bit of wounding and anti-heal, so our utility on our team comp is very balanced. Notice that we're also rolling these units on Pandora's Bench instead of saving for gold. A lot of people might be thinking selling all this to make your first 10, but he wants to use these precious few rounds to roll the 2 costs while he can. And he just knows that when you're playing Pandora's, your entire game plan changes to be low eco in general. And you can tell that he's in a little bit of a difficult economic spot because he is not making his first 10 gold. And at the very top, he's lose, win, lose. We're going to get this belt for Warmogs. So we already have 1 perfect item per set and 1 ideal item for Urgot. Losing that fight is actually kind of annoying because I feel like if he was able to put together a pretty good board, he could actually 4 streak with this Urgot 2. It's like pretty likely. Oh, he makes a Nocturne 2 and puts it in his Pandora's Bench. So he's going to roll his 2-star Nocturne 2, okay, going up against level 4 player, and he is level 4 himself because he's just too poor to actually level. So looks like he ends up losing and makes his first 10. It is important that you still do end up making your interest gold. So despite it being a little bit of a rough start, he's still trying to prioritize making gold whenever he can. Oh, and he gets a huge high roll. He's able to roll another Urgot 2, and now it's totally on. He texts in the Tristana. He's got the pick fighter. He is ready to go. And so, I mean, it's it's already very close to Urgot 3, and I mean, this is an ideal start to say the least. That being said, we still lose because other people are playing level 5 boards. We don't really have like a real board. We're playing like Urgot with minimal synergies, no tank, but we're spending time using the team builder just to kind of put together our team composition that we're going to be angling for. And he's kind of debating whether or not he wants to roll for 3 costs now because he wants to roll for the potential Nunu and some of the other 3 costs in the comp. But he's still going to have to make that gold because ultimately he is still very poor. So I expect him to probably sell if he needs to. All right, we sell the 30 and we drop a Quicksilver, which is also huge, and a belt. Okay, everything is lining up really, really nicely in terms of the itemization. And so we slammed that Quicksilver immediately and we can start planning around the second belt. And now we rolled the Pandora's Bench into the Nunu. So the stars are pretty much aligning for this composition to really shine. He's trying to manage his bench right now. And one thing to note about Pandora's Bench is that it's a little bit tricky to roll for more than 2 3-star because you only can have so much bench space. So you end up having a situation where you only can choose 2 of them to go for. So we're probably just going to go for set 3 and Urgot 3 only. All right, Tristana 2 got made through Pandora's Bench, and we're on our augment, and I apologize because it looks like a donation screen is is going on in a stream. So we got all that shimmers, which is actually, I think, quite a solid augment for Urgot because it allows you to get Gold Collector, and he has Gold Collector with Hodge and Quicksilver, which is not bad. The only thing is I think you want Infinity Edge with Gold Collector because of how much synergy Gold Collector gets by giving you crit. I don't think it's like ideal, but I do think that it is a pretty solid pick if you want to go for it. Crown Guarded is not very good in general for anything that isn't an AP tank, and I think in general Crown Guarded is probably going to get buffed pretty soon. I think it's just generally a little bit of a weak augment currently, so that's a skip from me. He reviews option 2 and he gets Portable Forge, and it's revealed that the third option is Bad Luck Protection, which is, let me read it here. Your team can no longer critically strike. Convert each % of critical strike into attack damage, and you get a glove, which is actually not bad because that glove can turn into Infinity Edge. So I'm considering that. Portable Forge has some hits, but ironically enough, one of the biggest hits is Gold Collector on Urgot. So I'd rather just take all that shimmers if we were to choose that. Rerolls options 3 and just keeps it open. And this one is looking forward where you lose all your gold, and then in 6 rounds you get all your gold back plus 70. That augment is pretty much for anything that already wants to lose streak. So for example, I think Chem Barons can probably get away with it because Chem Barons, you're just trying to lose anyways. So who cares? You just wait, you just lose your extra 6 and then you get all your gold back. That's fine. Or if you're in this position where you're trying to play like, you know, fast 9 and trying to capitalize off the 5 costs. I don't think that's applicable here. And he also rolls option number 1 and gets Vampiric Vitality. And I'm a little bit surprised by this. I feel like Gold Collector is actually quite good, but he chooses to roll for it. And I think that, I mean, it's pretty solid. It gives you some Omnivamp and also heals your player damage. So I think that's the only choice, unless he wants to gamble with Portable Forge. But the thing is with Portable Forge is, again, I think it's a little bit too risky because if you get like all AP stuff like Deathfire Grasp and Mana Zane, you're not going to be really happy since you've already committed to this line. All right, so we choose Vampiric Vitality, and that's okay. You know, it's just Omnivamp for the team. You're playing a melee carry, so Omnivamp is pretty important. And that's because melee units take a lot of damage from sources, so having Vampiric Vitality is probably fine. He's debating about whether or not he wants to roll this Tristana or play it. And I think that's a really interesting question because in the end, it doesn't matter as long as you have a Tristana. And this Tristana 2 can give him outs of rolls to potentially hit another sets or another Urgot. And I think he's kind of recognizing that he's also really poor. Look at him. He's level 5 right now. Like, he's not level 6. A lot of times you're 6 by 3-2. And that's because of how poor he is due to combining a bunch of 2-cost 2-stars and rolling with Pandoras. So I think this is a really interesting play that not a lot of people would do to try and increase the odds of hitting. They would just hold that Tristana because they say later on I'm going to play it. But I think he recognizes that it's not important right now. That being said, he can look really dumb. This is a play that could look really stupid if he just keeps losing it. Like, his chat spamming question marks, right? Like, what are you doing? But it's a play that I think could end up making him either look really silly or a complete genius, because that transforms into a set 2 and all of a sudden he's in a really, really good spot. It can transform to Urgot 3 immediately. And it goes back to the fact that his level 5 board is playing around 3 Experiment, Set, and Gangplank for the Pit Fighter. And the Artillerist can wait because that is just not really an important trait unless you're attacking a lot. And Urgot is much more about quality over quantity. Part of the reason why people don't carry Urgot with like Rage Blades because he doesn't really scale that well of attack speed. It's much more about like when he casts, he punches really hard. So Artillerist, a trait that scales with like the more attack speed you're able to get, or you know how many attacks you're able to actually do, it's not that important. Okay, looking for swords we can get in Affinity Edge later on. He's not going to use this to complete another Warmogs. He wants to finish Urgot 3 items ASAP. Plus, if he gets more swords, he can always combine into Death Blades for set later on. Okay, the Pandora's Bench transforms into Camille's. Funny enough, this is probably griefing a lot of Camille players. I mean, interestingly enough, like in another world, he probably could try and pivot into a Camille line, but probably not. The Wind-Up Monkey is going to give the Radiant Masterwork. So now he's going to upgrade his Hand of Justice to a Radiant Hand of Justice. And that's really important here because Urgot really wants to have that survivability. Unfortunately, it looks like he's getting run over by the Violet player, but that's okay. He has multiple 2-cost 2-stars. He's getting ready to transform them. And I think he's going to have to lose the next 2 fights and hope that he can roll down and 3-star some stuff by the beginning of stage 4. Oh, actually, he's rolling right now. Oh, because he wants to see if 1, he can hit the Urgot, but 2, I think he wants to make some 2-stars. Like he made that 2-star Akali to see if it can transform into the set. Interestingly enough, he's holding like 8 Urgots, but like these are 2-star 2-costs being rolled. So if he does end up rolling Urgot 3, he's going to have to sell 2 Urgots. Not that big of a deal, though, at the moment, I think. All right, so we lose our last round. We make a Nunu 2. Basically, what I talked about just happened, which is he combined into Urgot 3, but, like, has to sell the Urgots. So a little bit unfortunate, but it's okay. He can just now roll these Urgots into sets. The items drop are not that good this time, which I think is justified, given that it feels like he's been high rolling a little bit. Looks like he's going to build Titans instead of Deathblade, and I think that's entirely reasonable. In general, I think Titans and Hand just have a lot of synergy. Titans gives you offensive stats, but also gives you some resistances, and those resistances gets better when you have some Omnivamp. Looks like he is steamrolling some boards now because he does have that Urgot 3, so now the question becomes, how fast can we get the set 3 online, and then how much gold are we going to be able to use to get the anomaly for Hungry for Power so that we can get all of our composition online. For 2, we have Big Grab Bag, which gives you 3 items and a Reforger. We have Unlikely Duo that gives you Jinx and Savika, and I don't think that's exactly units that you can fit in easily. My general rule about taking things like trait unlocks is that you have to, 1, be able to slot them into your comp, but 2, have items for them. And so let's say you pick this and you play the Jinx into Savika. What items are we going to give them? We have Warmogs and we have Morello. That's not really applicable to either of them, so don't think it's something we pick here. This one, the third option behind this troll donation is Cloning Facility, which you put a unit in the 3rd row hex and it summons a second copy of it at 70% HP. This augment is kind of like a build a frontline if your composition kind of struggles with it. I think it's a good composition for compositions like Sorcerers, which is a lot more offensive oriented, and it feels like you don't have tanks, so maybe you can like summon 2 copies of Vlad 3 or Swain or something like that. I think that's probably better for those kinds of comps. Not really what we're looking for here, I think. We reroll all 3 options and we get Clockwork Accelerator, Mace's Will, and Mutation Survives. Clockwork Accelerator doesn't work with our game plan. We're trying to rush forward and dash with the experiment bonus and then blast through tanks to get to the back line. That's not really like the synergy that we're looking for. Clockwork Accelerator is much more for stalling. Mace's Will gives us the Infinity Edge immediately, which is actually kind of nice if we want to use that. And I do think personally that best in slot items is important. The downside is we just slam the Titans, so it's a little bit less valuable to get the Mace's Will. But I do think the crit strike chance on top of that is kind of nice. So I think it's a reasonable pick. The third one is Mutation Survives. And this one's actually a little bit of a confusing augment. But basically, it just means you get an additional experiment hex that you can sacrifice a unit for. And a lot of times, pragmatically, what that means is you sacrifice the Zyra. And that's about it. That way you get like extra bonus true damage on your abilities, which is pretty nice. That being said, we're not playing into 5 experiment. Usually when you do this, you want to play as high of experiment as you can. And because we don't really have the ability to fit Twitch and some other experiments into the build, we're pretty airtight with our package. I don't think it's a time to pick the Mutation Survives, at least not right now. Maybe a future variation of this will want to do it. Goes for Mace's Will and does end up upgrading things like the sets and the Tristana, which is huge. And because he's valuing best in slot that much, he's just going to go ahead and put that Infinity Edge onto the Urgot, like we said, which is really, really huge. Oh, interesting. He's actually going to push levels to 7 and hope that he can eventually get set through the Pandoras. And I actually like this play because I think he's recognizing that, yes, he would love to get set 3, but he doesn't have the ability to roll his gold, because rolling this gold is going to be really painful for him to find the set 3 and have enough gold for the anomaly. Plus, he's already getting rolls anyways, so he wants to favor board strength and play for his HP while he can, because he's already towards the bottom half of the lobby and bleeding out. So I think he's favoring his tempo. And this is, again, kind of an unusual spot to push, because he doesn't actually have that many good units to play. But he just plays a second copy of set 2, and he's hoping that that's going to be enough for now in order to stabilize him until he can get to the anomaly. He finds another Tristana, and he actually replaces his Tristana 2 with the Tristana 1, and this is all to just try to roll for 2-star 2 cost to try and spike the set 3. He's going to fix his positioning a little bit. I think solo frontline Urgot here is also a little bit too risky, because it's just taking damage. Like, let's say they have like the 3-star Violet, the 3-star Camille. You don't want Urgot to get bursted too quickly. Like, yes, you're trying to burst other comps, but you don't want to get bursted too hard yourself. And everyone has like radiant items now, so the power of this lobby is like spiking a lot. Okay, and a crucial win. And by the way, this is where Vampiric Vitality is really kicking in, because we're dropping down to the bottom 2, and then we're healing back up with Vampiric Vitality whenever we win fights. A lot of the ebbs and flows of Vampiric Vitality is what makes this augment really powerful if you have a strong composition. He grabs the sword off the carousel so that he can make a Deathblade on set, and finally we get the set 3 off the transformation. 3 attempts at it. Funny enough, we even got the extra Urgot, and so we're good to go. We have enough gold. We have the set 3. We have the Urgot 3, and we're right there in the middle of the pack. You know, nothing too crazy here HP wise. Other people are hitting things like Akali 3 and Camille 3 online. We're going up against Violet 3, and that Violet 3 is extremely scary. Mittens, Radiant Titans. Like, this is a lobby where people get to have incredible item combinations that you just don't really get commonly. And just look at him steamroll this Violet 3. Not even worth rolling any other 2 costs. Like, we can pick Ziggs and Nocturne and put them in Pandora's bench, but what are they going to roll towards? I guess Tristana maybe, but not that important at the moment. All right, and from here, we roll for Hunger for Power, and we're not going to stop rolling until we get it. And we have so much gold. I believe you need, you know, over 50 to guarantee it. We started off at 60, the high 60s, and now we got it at 49, so about 20 gold or so. That is very worth. And now we can remove and consume that set. And now we get to watch this comp in full action, which I'm really excited for. From here, we pretty much just push levels and add pit fighters, because pit fighters give us percentage healing on the pit fighters themselves, which is really nice for the Urgot. And look at how beefy this crab is. And he's just turning around and just one-shotting a bunch of these units. And that Quicksilver, you can see, is also coming in clutch, because that at least can't stun it. And then we have the full crit build. So he just like autos, hits really hard, chunks it. He sunders for himself, and he can't get stunned. And now you get to witness the Hungry Crab in action. This is a really, really powerful comp. End of creep round. Looks like we get a Deathblade. We can get onto the sets, and that's valuable because it just gives us more AD to sacrifice. So I think that's fully fine. We have a floating bow, which is a little bit unfortunate. We're going to probably look for a 3rd set item on carousel. Anything that gives health and attack damage, because those are the primary stats that you get. I guess you could theoretically also give the Titans to sacrifice, but it's not that important right now because it's too minimal stats. So you might as well just have it on a gangplank. That is a huge Garen that we're going up against with a bunch of anomaly HP, and it is taking it down no problem. And by the way, we have Vampiric Vitality, so the damage that we're dealing, we're also healing back. All of a sudden, we were in the 40s, right? We were in the low 40s, bottom 2 HP just a few rounds ago. Now we're kind of pushing top 2, and it's looking like we're pretty stable. And now we've leveled to 8, and we got the 4 Pit Fighter in. We can level to 9 eventually and get Savika and just cap out around Pit Fighters. You can also cap around some other things, like Elise can also go into the composition because you're playing a form swapper with Gangplank and a Bruiser, so that's also like some easy synergies you can get in. He's actually rolling the Elise, so it looks like he's not interested in it, and he doesn't have the space for it anyways, because right now, like we talked about before, the package that this comp plays is pretty airtight. You don't really have many flex spots. The flex spots are usually like the Pit Fighters themselves. I mean, it's another fight, and he is now just steamrolling everything. We're going through everything. We're going through a bunch of the Garens. We're going through the Black Rose units. We're going through the other reroll comps like Violet and Camille. We're pretty much destroying all of the meta comps currently that's being played. On Carousel, we're looking for another item that we can sacrifice. I see another Deathblade. Sacrifice that Deathblade onto set. and just stack even more glorious attack damage on this crab, which is awesome. Honestly, I'm actually more excited for this death play than another Warmox. I would love to see the AD on this Urgot go crazy. Currently, it's at 241. I want him to right-click it and see how much AD that we're able to get onto this Urgot. It's at 241 right now. He's hovering over it, and it's sacrificed to 411. Every single auto is just basically putting everyone at critical life, and then like even Gangplank 1, Tristana 1 can finish. Oh my god, 22,000 damage. Are you serious? I'm like looking at this fight again. This is crazy. I've never seen double Deathblade. I've only seen the Warmogs build. Are you serious? 22,000 damage. Oh my god. That is not okay. I think that's actually way too much damage, because it's not just 22,000 damage. It's 22,000 damage happening in the first few seconds of the fight. That's a huge difference, as opposed to stalling out, going to overtime, and dragging things out, and then eventually piling in a bunch of overkill. Looks like we got the Savika through the 5-cost roll, so we're going to go ahead and put the Savika in over the Draven, and it looks like we're all clear to go to level 9. Even if we lose this, not a big deal. We have the HP thanks to the Vampiric Vitality, and this is pretty much coast clear to get a first place. I would be so surprised if another composition can beat this. We're going to pop the Anvil at the end of stage 5, and I think we just pick up an item for a Pit Fighter. So yeah, it looks like at this point you just itemize a duo carry as if we need one, but this is not actually a composition that needs a duo carry. Once you get this online, you can kind of see it all align beautifully. And part of it is also that he has like Radiant Hand of Justice, so you know it's Radiant Hand of Justice plus the Mace's Will plus all this, like it all lined up really beautifully. But you can see why people think that this composition can be really powerful, because it's destroying all of the established meta comps. And it looks like he outplaces K3 Soju, who's eliminated as well. I mean, making light work of NA's heroes. APAC starting to stomp NA, not only at Worlds, but also in our ladder competitions. Is NA washed at TFT? I mean, it's just one super high roll game, but I mean, this is a pretty glorious game. Going up against Spite, Akali 3, and Akali has laser eyes, but like also notice that Urgot's just not taking significant amounts of damage. Like at most, he's getting chunked for 20-30% of his HP, because there's just not enough DPS in other people's compositions to actually seriously threaten Urgot. He just has too much HP. He's also dealing so much damage. He's healed back up to 70, which is just crazy to me. I wonder if there's a possibility that he would ever heal back up to like 100 HP if he didn't take as much damage as he did. That's really funny. Okay, he's going up against Heimer with blue buff, death cap, red buff, and it looks like this is a composition finally actually dealing enough DPS to take down this Urgot. Okay, well, I mean, leave it up to Heimerdinger with what looks like to be a mana anomaly to actually be able to burst down the Urgot. So let's see how he does with a little bit of resistance. But I think, you know, the damage is done. He's got to 9. He has so much gold. He has so many options. In fact, he has enough HP to even sack and go to level 10. So his spot is amazing. Going for the Savika pair with the Enforcer emblem. See if he can roll for Savika 2. Looks like he is going to 10, by the way. And he's going to 10 for 6 Pit Fighter. Gets the Enforcer emblem onto the Savika. Okay, so now 6 Pit Fighter gives Urgot even more healing. So huge amount of stat boost for him. I love that he like repositions the set from left to right as if it matters. Like the hunger for power consumes it either way. So I don't think it matters. And also, once he hits Savika 2, he legitimately has a second threat besides the Urgot. And so, yeah, I think it'll all be good once he gets that online. He actually does a really interesting play here. He moves the Malzahars out of the Pandoras because he recognizes that his opponent still wants to roll for Malzahars. So instead of rolling Malzahars for Savika and, you know, kind of thinking only about his own board, he's trying to deny his opponent's legendaries as well. And I think this is very, very smart as well. Just like small little things to optimize his plays. Because I think the only hope his opponent has is to try to hit Malzahar 2, you know, and cap out the board with 5 costs. He actually sacrifices his Nunu by putting it in the top right, trying to draw a little bit of aggression away from the Urgot. Because I think he recognized that last time that Urgot actually did get bursted. And it's still a little bit close, but you can see that Pit Fighter healing coming up real clutch. So, yeah, if Nostr can't deal with it now, once we hit Savika 2, it's 100% guaranteed, I think. But that was pretty close. Wow, he actually rolls 2 Malzahar 2s. There's only 2 more left. I mean, that means that Nostr has to roll exactly the last 2 Malzahars. That's crazy. I mean, in a funny world, he actually even rolls for Malzahar 3 himself. No, he can't actually do that because there's 1 Malzahar gone. But if he gets a duplicator, maybe? Okay, gets a Savika 2. And I think he's trying to go for the tuber now. He was rolling his legendaries and see if he can go for Savika 3. Gonna go for blue buff and try and make the Savika cast really quickly. One thing that's nice about Savika is that she can just straight up assassinate any target. One of her abilities just punches the target off the field. So if it hits like, you know, the Scion 2 and punches off the field, that'd be really, really huge. But this fight should not be close at all. It is a complete domination. And there you have it. YBY demonstrates you the full power and ceiling of this Hungry Crab composition. The Hungry Crab composition is really powerful, but again, you can't really hard force it every single game. I've seen people try it and they go 1-8-8-1. So you're not going to climb consistently. But if you have the spot for it, it can do some pretty incredible things. Hope you guys enjoyed this video of In Too Deep, and I'll see you guys next time.